Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for assembling here today. I'd like to introduce Ambassador Majid Al Suwaidi, Director General of the COP28 Presidency. Ambassador.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning to everybody. Just want to start by wishing Seth a happy birthday, our colleague who's been with us all year long, and hopefully the one who'll ask the first question, I hope. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Before I get to the core of things, I just want to say one thing. We're facing the most demanding COP agenda of all time, and what we are seeing right now is everybody working through that agenda. All COPs are challenging, but in this COP, we're trying to do something that has never been done before, something historic. We are trying to agree a comprehensive plan to close the gaps between where the world is and where it needs to be to keep 1.5 degrees within reach. That is our North Star. That has been our North Star all along. Part of this is to include language on fossil fuels in the text. If we can, that would be historic. Our approach was always to take two tracks. The first was driven by the presidency, and that was the action agenda. We did this because the moment called for action in the real world that delivers real results on the ground. This track has been a great success. We have more than 83 billion in new financial commitments, 130 nations signing up to triple renewables and double energy efficiency, and oil and gas companies stepping up for the first time on tackling methane emissions and many other targets. We have 11 declarations covering everything from finance to agriculture and for the first time health. The second track was always going to be the hardest because that is driven by parties. And while the presidency can guide and encourage, this is a process of consensus. Everybody has to agree. We've had already success by operationalizing loss and damage. In fact, we've gone further than that and asked, further than we were asked to go by mobilizing almost $800 million for the fund and its funding arrangements. That brings me to the state of the negotiations. Many issues remain open, and that is normal at this stage of things. As you know, yesterday we released a text. As you also know, lots of parties felt it didn't fully address their concerns. We expected that. In fact, we wanted the text to spark conversations, and that's what's happened. What we have seen since is that the parties have deeply held and deeply split views, especially on the language around fossil fuels. It's important to be clear on something. The text we released was a starting point for discussions. Again, this is entirely normal for a consensus-based process. When we released it, we knew opinions were polarized, but what we didn't know was where each country's red lines were. By releasing our first draft of the text, we got parties to come to us quickly with those red lines. We spent last night talking, taking in that feedback, and that has put us in a position to draft a new text. The text includes all the elements we need for a comprehensive plan to 2030. It's all there. Mitigation, adaptation, means of implementation, and loss and damage. And we've been seeking the right balance between those elements. But this is a process of the parties. It's a question of how ambitious the parties truly are and where they want the balance to be. That is what we're negotiating about. And while the presidency can guide, direct, and encourage, the level of ambition is for the parties to agree. When the new text is released, we will open to further feedback. The presidency is calling for the highest possible ambition, And we're committed to helping the parties agree the best plan they can for the world. We will keep you updated as best we can, and now we need them to roll up their sleeves and give us the text we can all be proud of. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. We will be open for some questions. If we can ask
You don't want to ask Seth on his birthday?
Seth on your birthday. We're happy for you to go first.
Thank you. Ambassador, thank you for doing this. In terms, since you now know where all the red lines are, in this next iteration, are you going to be mentioning a fossil fuel phase out? And given where you know the red lines are, is there space somewhere for a fossil fuel phase out between all the red lines? And is part of this an effort to show those countries that may not want fossil fuel phase out the anger and the depth of desire for that? In other words, are you showing them that they have to do this because there's such a desire?
Seth, you know very well, we've been traveling around the world talking to parties all year long. We've known for a long time that the language around fossil fuels is complicated and the views of it are complicated. And it's important that we have the right language when it comes to fossil fuels. It's important that we think about how we get that balance. There are those who want phase out, there are those who want phase down, there are those who want different formulations. The point is to get a consensus. And we don't want one formulation that causes blockages in the process. We need the parties to come together because we need to come back to what's the objective. The objective is to achieve 1.5, is to reduce global emissions by 43%, by 22 gigatons. What is this COP about? This COP is about the next 7 years. It's about how do we get back on track for the Paris Agreement. We've said as a presidency, we think fossil fuel language needs to be part of that. Now we need the parties to say, how do they land? We've spent a year knowing that that language doesn't work. So how do we find new ways of addressing the concerns of all of the parties in the right way and getting the consensus outcome we can? And that's our COP presidency has said we need that to be as ambitious as possible. And that's what we are. We stayed up all night discussing with parties about last night.
The microphone, the lady in green behind, sorry, first of all.
Hi, thank you. Good morning. I'm wondering if you could speak to some of the conversations that have been had with countries that have been pushing back against including fossil fuel language, such as OPEC overnight. Where do you expect them to land on this, and how are you bringing everyone on board? Thank you.
Thank you. Look, I want to be very clear about this. Our conversations are with parties, and they're with parties here, and they're in the rooms with the COP president who are laying out to us their red lines, they're laying out to us their positions. And I think that it's important to understand that there are many different views on this language. We know that. We know that there are many different countries with different circumstances, different situations, different challenges that they're facing. And it's not a binary solution. And where we're putting binary solutions, that means is we're not finding consensus. The whole purpose of a multilateral process is to bring people together with solutions that we can move forward with. And here, we need it to be as ambitious as possible. We need it to achieve that 1.5 degree target, or keeping global temperature under 1.5. So what we're about is bringing the parties together. We've heard their views. We need to work on how we put their views into the text in a way that everybody can be happy with, and that we can move forward to achieving the goals. And I think that what happened with our text was really that we were having honest, practical, pragmatic conversations about where people's red lines really were and what is really good for us to move forward and to be back on track to achieving our goals and the goals of Paris.
The lady here who had the mic just now.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. Sarah Schoenhart from Politico. Sultan Al Jaber has talked about multilateralism and making this an inclusive process, but we heard from many countries last night they feel marginalized and that they don't feel this has included their voices. That there are certain countries who may not want a fossil fuel phase out really dominating the conversation. How do you intend to bring their voices in and make this more inclusive? I think otherwise they would consider this a failure.
I think that we've been as inclusive at this COP as any COP president. I can tell you that last night we went through every negotiating group in our meetings. Every single negotiating group was given as much time as they wanted to sit with the COP president and reflect their views. And we captured all those views. We did that in the formal setting, and then we did it with the COP president. So every party has had a chance to meet this COP president. He stayed up till, I think, 4 a.m. or later, meeting everybody. So this has been an inclusive process. What I'll say is that this COP has also been the most inclusive COP ever. We've had greater than 80,000 participants. We've had NGOs, civil society, indigenous people, young people. We have had everybody coming to express their views and give their views. And now we've given that to the parties. And again, I come back to the point. The ambition and the outcome is defined by the parties. We as a COP president bring them together. We put on the table a proposed text based on their inputs, and it's up to them to then define how ambitious they want it to be. Our COP presidency doesn't show favoritism to any party. We are trying to find a balanced outcome that reflects the very, very different views that we heard in the room, and that text that we put out reflected what we saw. It sparked conversation, and now we can move forward and to develop a text that hopefully people can be happy with. Shona, let them ask more.
Hello, Danish news agency Ritzau. In the first draft, the word could was essential. Is the word could going to be in the next draft, and how can you call that ambitious if all the climate action is something that you can only choose to do?
I think there's could a lot of times, and should, and would, and how, and where, and when, and there's lots of words in the text.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's in front of all the climate actions in the paragraph 39, I think. There's like this essential word could right before everything.
The important thing is that with the text that we come out with, is that everybody looks at the whole package. I was a negotiator for many, many years, and I know how easy it is for negotiators to get hung up on one word or to focus on one thing. As a presidency, I sit in a different position in terms of trying to deliver a text that everybody can feel happy with. And so I encourage you, just like we encourage all negotiators, when you read the text, read the whole of the text, the complete package. And those are the things that will show the ambition, will show us how we get back on track. Our goal is that the whole package makes everybody happy, and that the whole package clearly charts a path towards 1.5, which has always been our North Star, and make sure that we get back on track to achieving the goals of Paris, because we can't forget that that's what this is about. This is about making sure that we collectively, as a global community, come together, get back on track to achieving the goals of Paris, and show how we're going to clearly do it in a pragmatic and practical way, in an honest way, that people in the real world can feel, can understand, and can help us to move forward and to not repeat the mistakes of the past. We've been doing the same thing for years and years, expecting a different result. What we've tried to do is to deliver an outcome that everybody can get around, that shows practical, pragmatic solutions, honest solutions that help us to move forward. And that's what we're asking all the parties, is to work together, to unite, to act, and to deliver.
Mr. Ambassador, my name is Leon Lidigu from Nation in Kenya. Now, the Africa Group of Negotiators says their GGS have not been met, the thematic areas have not been prioritized. They feel that we are leaving COP28 with an empty bucket as a continent. What is in this process for Africa? How are we going to benefit? Because they feel that we are the most vulnerable when it comes to the impact of the climate crisis, yet we have little to do with emissions and those all other things. Thank you.
I'm grateful that you asked this question because I think that it's really important that we remember that this process has to serve the most vulnerable first, that this process has to deliver for those who contributed the least, have the least resources and ability to tackle it, and are affected the most. This has to be about vulnerable communities. In our action agenda, we clearly made it about those groups, and our presidency delivered real results that will help deliver in the real world for people who are vulnerable today. Our loss and damage outcome at the beginning of COP was already a huge success. If you look back to TC4, we were far apart in terms of how we were going to deliver. Many people said we couldn't deliver it. We got them here in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi for TC5. We got the negotiators together. We managed to rally them, and we delivered on the first day of COP. What presidency has been able to deliver on the first day of COP a decision on something so controversial as loss and damage that will serve the vulnerable communities? And guess what? We went a step further. Not only did we operationalize the loss and damage, but we capitalized it. And today we have almost 800 million in pledges to loss and damage, and that's already a success from COP28. We have other successes across the many different action agenda items we have. We have good outcomes on the decisions. Now we need parties to come forward and show us clearly how they're going to deliver the ambition. And we as a COP presidency, in every meeting we had last night, said we want the most ambitious outcome. Help us to deliver it. Help us to get that outcome. We need everybody to help us to deliver the most ambitious outcome possible that achieves 1.5 degrees and gets us back on track to achieving the goals of Paris.
I'm Sajila from Gulf News. COPs are known for running over time. With all these new developments, what's your assumption? It's going to happen here as well? And if yes, how long should we expect it to run? The birthday boy here tells me that he's not flying out for some more days.
Talia, I think that we all would like to finish on time, but we all want to get the most ambitious outcome possible. That's our singular goal. So we are not focused on those types of issues. We're focused on getting the most ambitious outcome possible, and our COP presidency will do whatever is needed to make sure that we get that outcome today, and we're focused on that, and I think that we can work to deliver that. Shauna, maybe one more.
Hans van Leeuwen from the Australian Financial Review. Although you clearly have a very high ambition for this COP, does the consensus process, by its very nature, ultimately lead to a lowest common denominator outcome?
I don't think so. I think the consensus nature of COPs is critical because, as we know, climate has no boundaries. The atmosphere has no boundaries. And many countries, like the UAE, could do all the action in the world, which we're doing, and hopefully you've been around the UAE visiting the different things we have. Here we have 3 of the largest, lowest cost solar in the world. But the impact wouldn't be as strong as if from the collective action we have. And we have to move together. That's why we have a consensus process in COPs, because we need everybody to move together, everybody to work together. And in consensus, we need to have empathy. We need to have respect. We need to have an understanding of people's different circumstances and situations. In the UAE, we have great solar opportunities, but we don't have great hydro, right? We don't have access to those kinds of technologies. Other places do. And that's why it's important that we deliver consensus, and consensus can deliver ambitious outcomes. It's ambitious because we're all moving together, we're all moving in the same direction. That's what makes it powerful. And so I believe the consensus process of the COP is one of the most powerful processes of the multilateral system.
Georgina Rana, BBC News. Thank you, Ambassador. You're saying to parties that the ball is in their court, but if this fails, won't it be the presidency who is judged?
I don't see why that would be, because we are 198 countries. We work together through consensus, which we just talked about, to deliver an outcome. We are collectively part of this process. Our role as presidency is to convene and bring everybody together. We've been very clear that we want that ambitious outcome. We've set the bar of where we need to get to, and now parties need to decide. We know that this is a consensus process. We know that parties need to deliver it. It's up to them to show us the ambition. We've provided the space, we've provided the ambition, we've provided the goals. Now they need to step up to that challenge, and that's what we were telling them last night. And we will reflect their views in the text. We will reflect their views in the text. And that's what we've done, and that's what we'll continue to do.
I think that's all the time
Okay.
we've got now.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, everybody.